What's up, everybody, and welcome back to the Rocky Mountain Sports Network. I am your host, Michael Cake, and the Atlanta Hawks were just eliminated from the playoffs a couple days ago from the Boston Celtics. Let's talk about what they can potentially do in the future. So, starting off, obviously, let's talk about what they did in the playoffs. They beat Miami. They went into Miami, actually, and beat the Heat in the play-in, and now they're kind of in the second round now. So, the Atlanta Hawks were kind of the wake-up call for the Miami Heat that they needed to get to this point. Honestly, looking back at it, makes it even more impressive for the Atlanta Hawks. They then went into Boston and they lost the series 4-2. Trae Young looked really good in the series and kept them alive with 29 and 10 while hitting some insane game winner in game 5. DeAndre Hunter showed some scoring signs. He had a key 27 game and averaged 16 in 6 games compared to his 15, so a little bit higher. DeJounte also played well, playing 20, scoring 23, 6, and 7. But however, he did get into an altercation with the ref that suspended him for game 5. So he only played 5 games in the series. They still won the game without him. So didn't really make a difference, but he did do that. My biggest takeaway from this game was that the defense is still not where they want to be for the Atlanta Hawks. The Celtics averaged 121.2 points per game in this series. And whenever the Celtics would take a big lead at half, then the Hawks would attempt to come back, but then it would be even harder because they would not get the stops they really needed down the stretch. Like, they obviously have the players that could potentially have a good defense for them, and DeAndre Hunter. Sadiq Bey is not a bad defender. Onyeka Okongwu is also really good, and obviously DeJounte Murray is also really good on defense, and Quinn Snyder is also really good with building defensive teams. So they have the potential to have a good defense. Let's talk about the DeJounte Murray trade, though. The Atlanta Hawks received DeJounte Murray and Jock Langdale, and the Spurs received Danilo Gallinari, 3 first-round picks, and a pick swap, which, I mean, obviously, 4 first-round picks kind of with the pick swap is really hard to lose. However, DeJounte Murray played very well for them this season, averaging 20.5, 6, 5 boards, and 1.5 steals. And I think this trade actually is going to end up being huge for the Atlanta Hawks going forward. Next year, DeJounte Murray makes $17 million, and then obviously he's going to be a free agent. However, he does a great job of covering up Trae Young's defense as a point guard, as the shooting guard for the team. He does great at switching. He does great defensively on the perimeter, gets steals for the team, does a whole bunch of things that Trae Young can't really do. So the fact that he's able to cover up Trae Young's defense is absolutely huge for this team. And I think going forward, it's going to continue to be huge if they decide to keep Trae Young on the roster. Let's look forward to the future a little bit here. Aaron Holiday is the only unrestricted free agent on this team. And that kind of begs the question of, should they trade Young? And I don't think they should. I think that this series showed that he can still be a huge contributor for them. Obviously, his defense is a massive problem for him, but I'm kind of going to talk about things that they could potentially do to cover up him defensively and make it so he can really focus offensively on his game and potentially maybe even learn from players that can make him better defensively. So that's why I think that this team needs to take a big swing and get a 3rd star in a trade that's based around John Collins and Clint Capella that can kind of play defense. I have a 3rd option here that's not completely for defense. That will be more of a scoring option for them, but it'll also result in a potential moving in of somebody else from the bench that could help them defensively. The first candidate I have is Paul George. If Paul George decides that he doesn't want to play for the Clippers anymore, or the Clippers wanted to move on from him, I could see this being a good trade candidate for them if they wanted to bring in somebody like John Collins and Clint Capella. And obviously there'd be more pieces to make the salaries work and everything. But bringing in somebody like Paul George could be somebody that would benefit this team greatly. They could play him at the 3, move DeAndre Hunter to the 4, and then again move Onyeka Okongwu to the center for defense, which would be great for them defensively. I think that they would need something like this for Trae Young to kind of focus more on offense and kind of continue that development here. Similar idea with the second option in Pascal Siakam. The Toronto Raptors will be making some moves this offseason, but we just don't know what they're going to be yet. But if it does revolve around Pascal Siakam, they could bring in John Collins for offense. They have the defense, so they don't really need him to be defensively oriented. And Clint Capella would be a huge rebounder for them if they decide not to bring back Jakob Poeltl. And finally, the third option would be Karl Anthony Towns. This is not much of a off or defensive option for them, more of an offensive option if the Timberwolves decide that they want to move on from Karl Anthony Towns. They could use a player like Capella to be kind of a bench option for them, and then they could bring in John Collins to play alongside Rudy Gobert, and his offense would obviously be good. And defensively, he wouldn't have to rely so much on him because he has somebody like Rudy Gobert right behind him. So doing this, obviously, moving Clint Capella would move Onyeka Okongwu into the starting lineup. He's shown great defensive prowess throughout his young career here. So I think bringing him in to be that kind of Rudy Gobert for Quinn Snyder would be huge. I think he has the potential. He could win Defensive Player of the Year if he is in the right situation, which I think if they decided to bring in somebody like a Pascal Siakam or a Paul George, it could really help him defensively, as he could be a good help defender for them, or he could just be a good shot blocker, and he wouldn't have to worry about the offensive side of the ball as much because they have so much firepower. What I'm basically trying to do is build a defensive team that could cover up Trae Young and his bad defense, or could even improve his defense. They got players like DeJounte already, who's very openly talking to people all the time, and is very vocal in the locker room. So even if they could all improve Trae Young's defense, that would be something that would work as well. But just to cover up Trae Young's defense in general would be something that would really benefit this team. Quinn Snyder has definitely shown that he can build around a good defense. They showed it in Utah. They had a potent defense for very long, obviously centered around Rudy Gobert, but now they could potentially do it with Onyeka Okongwu, which would work for them. They could bring in somebody who could score the ball like a Pascal, like a Paul George, like a Karl Anthony Towns, and it wouldn't really affect them that much defensively. Obviously, Pascal and Paul George are great defenders, so that would obviously help them as well. And then they could bring in a third star and potentially make a push towards an NBA title that way. Free agency is obviously not going to play a factor for this team as they are over the cap. They will have to just re-sign DeJounte Murray next offseason, not this offseason. So maybe they will want to save some money for that. But that's pretty much going to be everything for this video. Hopefully the Atlanta Hawks can maybe make a move, make the offseason a little interesting this year so that they can go into next year defensive oriented a little bit more and really help Quinn Snyder make this team the best that they can possibly be, because I like Quinn Snyder as a coach for this team. If they wanted to make it a more defensive-oriented team, it would be great for them. So let me know what you think in the comments about what the Atlanta Hawks should do. Should they trade Trae Young? That's up to you. What do you want to do in the comments is up to you. Like and subscribe if you are new to the channel. Follow us on social media. The links will be in the description for that. And yeah, thank you guys all for watching, and I will see you guys all later.